Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Venerable Pedro, for being here. We're really happy to interview you. And as Bob said, just thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to talk with you. So I guess the first question I have is, how has your choice to follow a vegan lifestyle influenced your religious practice?
Okay, so let me please before that saying thank you guys. I mean, it's a honestly it's a great pleasure to be part of DVA. I mean, for me, it's a dream come true, as I say to Bob many times before. I mean, I think I honestly believe that you guys do an extremely necessary work. So to combine Buddhism with animal rights and so on, I think for me is a dream come true. I'm sure for many other people. So the question is I don't really know if there was one uh, principal point in in my Buddhist life. I don't know. I mean, certainly I've seen all the documentaries like I don't know Earthlings and all that stuff when they came out with Joaquin Phoenix and so on. Um, and that was of course an important point in my life and in for many people. But for me, it was something gradual. I remember when I was rising in the north of Spain. So I remember I went to a slaughterhouse there and a chicken farm. I was like 8 years old. When I was in the slaughterhouse was one of my friend's fathers was the owner. So I went there just to go invited. I was like 13 years old, something like that, and I was totally horrified. I mean, I remember. Well, I couldn't get in the process of I just heard the screams and so on. But I got into the chicken farm. And I was like, I was in Soria, right in the north of Spain, and I was like, let's say 7, 8 years old. And I also was uh, uh, the owner was the father of a friend of mine, a different person. Um, I remember I got traumatized. I mean, really, it was something really traumatizing for me to see all these birds into those small cages and so on. Of course, I'm totally sure that came into me in a, let's say, unconscious way, as many times happens. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but sometimes you get just the seed of it at a certain point of your life, you forget about it, and then it rises up.
Mm.
So I remember that as a very important point in my life, but I still ate meat. I remember I ate meat, kind of contradictory. I'm sure you guys know the psychologist, American psychologist. I don't remember her name, but she explained very well the processes of how we split up our minds. I don't know, Andrea, if you know the name of her. She's a very famous psychologist. I don't remember. Melanie Joy. Melanie Joy. Okay, so Melanie Joy explains very well how can you do this to survive, just to survive yourself. You feel so guilty, so much guilt into yourself that you cannot survive. So you have to split up. So I'm not eating uh, um, an alive being. I'm just it's just meat. So you split up. You get two different parts of your brain when you meet. But let me tell you this: my father some months ago told me that before I wanted to become a musician, something that I didn't know. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I didn't know that because I didn't remember that. But he told me that like 4 5 months ago, and I said, "Really? I didn't remember that." I said, "You were obsessed with animals." I'm now obsessed with animals. I mean, I think all of us were somehow, right? So um, it was a great surprise for me. I didn't know that. But I remember when I was like 20 something, there was certain point where I say, I cannot keep doing this. I mean, I cannot be divided in my brain. I know this is not good. And the first thing, I don't know if it is eating, because I mean, Andrea, I know you for, she has been doing here a great lecture some months ago in Spain. And you know that I'm really, my main point is of interest, of course, is I'm a vegan, everything is important, but animal testing for me breaks my heart. I mean, that's something so terrible that I still cannot handle it. So I don't know if a Buddhist, the other day I said to my students, there are certain kinds about hurting animals that I still don't know how to handle. I still, even though that I have been meditating for more than 20 years and so on, there's certain things that are impossible for me to bear. No, it hurts so much. So yes, I don't know. I still don't know, but I believe that it first got my love for animals, and then I became a Buddhist. It was the opposite side. But as I always say, it is not necessary to love animals to respect them. It's something, it's as you know, like rock and roll. You don't have to, you have to respect the people who like rock and roll, even if you don't like it, right? So it's a question of respect. Even if you don't love animals, most of my students are vegans, but some of them, they don't really love animals. They just respect them. I think that's a good point of view. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that is how I can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible to hear that you've had this kind of positive relationship with animals since you were little. That's really beautiful. This is a bit of a tangent off of my questions, but you kind of touched on how some animal suffering is really hard to deal with. And I wonder if you have any suggestions for Buddhists. What can you do as a Buddhist to help?
I'm very sorry to disappoint you, Katie, but I'm not the right person to do that. Let me tell you why. Because I have to deal with my own insecurities. I'm a human being. I might be a Buddhist teacher, but I am a human being too. So my main point is like, I'm not perfect. And I don't know how to deal with that. I'm serious about it. I've been practicing for more than 20 years. And some of the things that my teachers, some of them is that right there is Godo Wafunshima in Japan. Say it is like, the word might hurt much more when you, let's say, internalize or realize certain things about the real life, or let's say the reality, but your capability of handle the situation of that suffering, it also grows up. But it is not in my case. Let me tell you this. In my case, I might seem, maybe I'm cheating somehow, seem like I know certain kind of things of reality, but my capability of bearing with suffering with animals is not that. Okay, let me tell you this. Sometimes I'm going in my car and certain kind of feeling comes into my mind, and I start crying because I'm thinking, like, while I'm driving, probably one monkey, one laboratory is being abused in different ways. So that's how I don't have the solution for that question. I mean, I'm really sorry, but I'm trying to figure it out by myself. I don't really know. I mean, I try to take distance of my ego sometimes, and it feels great when I pay attention to my breathing and so on. But it comes back. And let me tell you this, I don't believe the solution. I don't know what is the solution, but I don't think the solution goes through looking to somewhere else. I think we should have the responsibility of looking to the problem. What kind of Buddhist should we be if we look to somewhere else where the suffering is being provoked? So I don't really have any advice for that question. A very, very clever, very smart question, but I'm not the right person to solution that, because I'm still dealing with that. I'm still suffering a lot for the suffering of the animals. So, and that is something I always talk with my students about in the Zendo about all this stuff. And you know, it's tough because sometimes you have to know that living is killing, right? You eat the apple, and you eat the tomato, and you eat something that is always being there sometimes, even though they don't feel right. But you're still alive because something is there, right? Even not only carnivores, but vegans also notice that. And when you're driving, you are killing animals. And when you're stepping the floor, you are killing animals too. And when you're taking your vaccines, you are killing viruses and so on. But in my opinion, this is about maybe preserve life as much as possible and creating as less suffering as possible we can do. Now we know that, of course, it's impossible to not to kill, as I say, but the unnecessary suffering is clearly easy to avoid in certain ways. That's my opinion. Maybe I might be wrong, but that's how I think.
No, that's incredible. Thank you. And I think we're all really just doing the best we can and trying to navigate this really, really complex world and trying to do as little harm as possible, like you said. I guess, would you say that your diet or eating less meat is one way that maybe directly contributes to less suffering, or is one way to perhaps reduce
Well,
that?
that's a difficult point. I mean, I've talking a lot with Andrea about this, and well, I don't eat meat at all, but I can understand. I mean, okay. I hope we have time to deal with this,
Yeah, of
but
course.
let me tell you. Sometimes I don't agree with certain kind of vegans, certain kind, not all of them. So if you have time, I will explain it to this. I will explain this. So the main point with veganism is like sometimes, okay, so when you see the carnivores, you can feel like they see animals are different than us. We are not animals, they're animals. So they, in their moral, let's say, level, they are below us, right? So we are superior to them. Of course, vegans, we don't believe that. That's the main point. We don't believe that we are superior to animals. So that's one of the main points. But you can see in the carnivores. But with certain vegans, I can see they consider carnivores to be less human or not to be animals, but they are animals eating other animals. So if you're a vegan and you see, of course, I mean, it's a different situation. But when you see let's say the lion eating I don't know, the zebra, for example, you don't see any evil on it. You can see that it is his way of being, right? Of course, the lion is not cruel. It's not cruel. They kill only one zebra, and then if the rest of the zebras walks around, they don't see them because it's a question of survival. And we are cruel. I'm not saying like we don't have the moral compass, right? So I have to distinguish this. Of course, a carnivore is not a lion, not at all. But in my opinion, to solve this conflict, as you say, this really complex world as we are, the first thing we should do is not to fight against each other, not only between carnivores and vegans. So, but also between vegans. There are this kind of movements and teams and so on. They are always fighting against each other. So I think the main point is like we will not fix anything through conflict. That's my opinion. So at a certain point, when vegans say they are, let's say carnivores thinks we are superior to vegans and to animals, and vegans believe we are superior to just to carnivores, I don't think we are no superior to anybody. So, and that's why, in my opinion, Buddhism or any kind of practice may help with that. When you start seeing yourself as you are, you can see, at least in our practice in Zen Buddhism, we can clearly see like we are not different. We are exactly the same as the crocodile or the carnivore or the vegan. But of course, the main problem is like the carnivore may see us different as them, but I don't see them as different. But at the same time, of course, they have the critical reason, right? The carnivores should notice that, but I don't think we should impose our point of view to carnivores. That's one of my main points. So many of my students became vegans with years, and I didn't impose them anything. I just talked to them, and I just say, "Okay, guys, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm not trying. I'm just trying to expose what is happening in the world with that." And they are very happy. And some of them are starting the process right now. And for some people, it might happen. One of my dear students, it happened when he saw earthlings. And from the right at night, he said, I will not consume any animal products anymore in my life. It wasn't like that for me. For me, I became vegetarian first and then vegan. But I think, as you say, that maybe, I mean, I know all the conflict that the vegans have against abolitionists and welfareists and so on. But I don't think we should get into that. That's my opinion as a Buddhist, at least. I think if someone believes like maybe eating meat just once a week is enough, that would be great. And then maybe starting moving, maybe, I don't know. And for certain, and for some kind of people, it works just doing in a radical way. That's perfect for me too. But I think we have to understand that we are different people and we have karma. And my karma may not work right in the radical way. And for me and for other people, maybe the radical way is the one way. So we never know. That's my opinion. But for sure, I think in most of cases, I will not say all of them, but in most of cases, it's unnecessary to consume animal products for sure. I mean, let's say, I mean, as a Buddhist, one of the mottos of Zen Buddhism is one of the rules is that there is no rule. So of course, when you have this moral compass in the first precept of Buddhism is to preserve life, not to kill. But we know it is impossible, right? So when I drive to the Zendo just to do this wonderful interview, I kill some mosquitoes and so on, right? Mm. But to preserve life as much as possible, I think it's a nice way to do it, or at least to see it. And of course, if you live in the North Pole, probably it is impossible to live and not to killing, right? But in most of cases, let me say, I have to think about it, but most of cases, I think we can drastically reduce the suffering of animals in all ways. Not only eating animals or dressing their skins and so on, but also with animal testing and so many other ways, like an expert as Andrea, that she has a wonderful background in all this stuff. Unfortunately, I don't have it, but she's at least for me, it's an example. It's a role model, a role model for me in that way, and she really knows about all these different ways that we can, let's say, help other beings in this earth to enjoy life. Okay, so I have this Weimaraner. I have this wonderful dog that is my life. She knows. I send many videos to Andrea of my dog. She's just wonderful, and she's my life. I really resonated with Andrea. Some months ago, she told me that she gave her dog much before he passed away, right? And I totally understand, because I do it sometimes, unfortunately. And she's really young. I mean, she's 2 years old. But when you connect with such an animal in that way, you will do anything for it. Mm-hmm. So if I do it for my dog, how can I do it for some other animal? So for me, it's a question. In Buddhism, it makes no sense not to reduce suffering of all kind of beings, humans and non-humans. So for me, Buddhism, of course, it is related in to preserve animals from suffering, and for me it's very easy. I don't know, it's something that is easy to see. Yeah. But in my opinion, Buddhism can help a lot, because when you kind of dissolve your boundaries in any kind of meditation, all Buddhist practice like samatha or vipassana or zazen or whatever is their school, their tradition, you can see what you consider yourself to be a human being, it is not such. So in my opinion, that helps a lot. I might be wrong, but I think it helps.
Yeah, I love that. Earlier you had said, I really appreciate how you kind of said that you're not really trying to force others or impose your view onto others, and how there's no right way and we have this kind of sameness, but that what you do is kind of just expose students or kind of keep like an open book, I guess, for students to approach if they're if they're curious. So I guess if you have students who are curious about eating less meat or how they can reduce animal suffering, where do you usually guide them to? What Buddhist texts or what are there things that you guide them to?
Yes, I really like. Thank you very much for this question. Actually, let me tell you something that I said to Andrea some months ago. You know, I honestly believe. I mean, it might seem totally different, but I don't think so. You know, James Gunn is the director of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And this movie has been such an impact in the world. I mean, I honestly believe not such a work of art has made such an impact. Not Earthlings, not such as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Because I still get some kind of emotional when I talk about this. Because when the Rocket Raccoon, that you know that he's passed through all this terrible animal testing, and it's a Marvel movie, but this guy's a genius. I don't know how he made it up, how he he put this on a Disney movie. I don't know how he did it. I have to call him. How you did it, man? I mean, amazing, because I can feel all these kind of meat enterprises saying don't put that on the laboratories and so, but he did it. He made it. So the first when they allow Rocket the Raccoon, the main character of the movie, to speak, the first word he say is hurts. After all the way of pain and suffering, and that is something that breaks me. I mean, it honestly breaks me, because I have to say, it is difficult for me and to my students, and I have to say to my students, please, if you don't want to watch any kind of movies, I understand the trauma, right? I understand that certain kind of people cannot see these Earthlings and all much more modern movies that they have been released, but they can approach to Guardians of the Galaxy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big deal for me. And some of them, they have seen it and they got shocked, because you can see the Marvel movie with all these really exposing what is happening with animal testing in the front line. So I always tell them, 1 week ago, one of my students saw the movie. I say, just see the movie, and then we can chat after that, and we can talk about this. And it's not a traumatizing movie. I mean, for me it is, because it's about releasing animals from animal testing. That's the main line of the plot for me. But some of the students, they're not interested in that at the beginning, and that's fine for me. I just drop some kind of seeds about this, and I talk about the importance of being respected to all kinds of lives. There are certain books. I remember Philip Kaplan-Roshi had a book about animals. I don't remember the name of the book. And there are certain books of animals and Buddhism. But let me tell you this, I think Andrea knows, in 2025, I will release a book. I will release a book about animal rights and Buddhism that I have signed up the contract right now. And it will be called, probably, I think this is a premiere, Murphy and the Others. Murphy is the name of my dog. Murphy and the Others, Approaches to Animal Rights Through Buddhism. That would be the title of the book. It's been written, but I have to work a lot on it. And I don't know, I think there are many books of Buddhism and animal rights, but I think everybody has their own timing. You know what I mean? The evolution of karma and the karma maturity is something that I don't really understand very well. Why certain people do it right away? Why certain people needs a lot of time? Why? Something that I have to take out is like when you force somebody to read something and they don't go to the source, but the source arrives to them, it doesn't work that well. I think people must feel the need of investigating or maybe making their own research. You know what I mean? And maybe that establishes certain kind of stability in their points of view. That's what I have checked, but it might not be like that. But at the same time, I always respect the timing of the people with arriving to such a drastic, because some of them, they are fathers, right? And it's when you're a parent, it's difficult because you have to think, okay, so should my children be vegan too? You know what I mean? This kind of fights, the inner fights that they always have, and so on. And they need their time, or their couples, right? Their husbands or wives or fiancés or whatever. They have to deal with certain people, with certain problems. Sorry, but I always say it's fine. Don't force anybody around you. That is your work. That is something that you have to deal with yourself. And if you, in my opinion, become the example, people might be, let's say, interested in your role modeling. You know what I mean? So I think it might work like that. I've never tried to convince anybody veganism, and many people became vegan, hopefully due to me, but I never fight to them or try to convince them. Never. So I think the best way of letting, maybe, I don't know, letting people or approach people to become vegan or at least vegetarian, or let's say have a diet based in plants, is to become a role model, is to be non-conflict person. So because sometimes when you see this kind of radical vegans fighting against each other or against the carnivores, I will never try to be that. You know what I mean? It's something that if that works like that, I would prefer to be a carnivore. You know what I mean? So you have to become the example for other people. So let's respect each other. Let's be the role model for other people. That's my. I might be wrong, but that's my point of view.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think that is such good advice. Just being your best self, being a role model, and just remaining approachable for other people to come to you when they're ready to ask.
Yeah, but I totally agree. But let me finish with this. At the same time, it's important that organizations as DBA and PETA and so on still do their work at the same time. So you have to be the role model, not trying to fight against people, but at the same time, it's very important that certain organizations or foundations as DBA and so on, or WWF and so on, made their work. You know what I mean? They put a lot of effort and money in trying to make visible all this kind of suffering and all this kind, because I don't know what would happen if earthlings or guardians of I would like to be so powerful so I could check in the universe how many people become vegan due to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. You know what I mean? It would be great. Because this guy, James Gunn, is a role model for me. It's like, okay, this guy made an astonishing achievement just making art. How many people has, opened their eyes to the animal testing suffering through that wonderful movie? So that is something that maybe we have to think about.
Definitely. I love that. I think we need people to be aware of what's going on, but also not to push it on them. So I think,
exactly.
Of course, that's what we're doing at DVA. It's important work to kind of get the word out and provide supports for people who are interested in exploring being plant-based. I guess so. Another question I had, so we've talked a lot about these things that have sort of influenced you in your life to care about animals. Are there any specific Buddhist teachings, or do you find a lot of connection between your Buddhist practice and this care and compassion for animals?
Well, let me tell you this. I mean, I don't think that we can separate or split up Buddhism and compassion. I mean, Buddhism is compassion. They always say, and I might be agree, I don't know, that Christianism is the religion of love, and Buddhism is the religion of compassion. I don't think that Buddhism is other thing than compassion. I mean, it's impossible for me to separate from that. Starting from that, I don't really know if there are any kind of readings or texts. Let me say, in Zen Buddhism, we have the precepts, the main precepts. And the first one is to preserve life, not to kill. And that's one of the main. Of course, I know that the Muslims and Christians also have them, and many religions have them. But when you see them quite close enough, I mean, at the same time, you have to figure out that it's impossible to fulfill that precept radically, not to kill. No, as we talked before, only to have antibiotics is to kill animal life. But the importance of noticing how precious life is, I think that is something that Buddhism alerts us as somehow in our practices. Because as I said before, when you practice, at least in our practice, Zazen, it is not so clear what is outside and inside. And at the same time, it is not so clear what is me and what is the others. So let me tell you this. I mean, probably my love for animals, as I say, it started quite soon in my childhood. But I became vegan after become a Buddhist, because when you sit against the wall, it is so clear, so manifest clear that what I call myself is not myself. So my real self. So when you take all the teachings that the wall teach us outside of the Zendo or the Buddhist hall or the practice hall or whatever you want to call, at least for me, it's obvious that we are not that different as we think. So I think more than a book or a teaching, a specific teaching, is practice what can help us. Meditation. We don't call it meditation, we call it Zazen, but it's more or less the same. Zazen means, Za means sit, and Zen meditation, but it's not exactly meditation. But it's okay if we call it meditation, right? And our practices, I think, are the best witness and are the best compass for the kind of life we should have, not causing suffering outside of the places we practice. So I don't think there is a specific book. I'm sure there are wonderful books. No, don't misunderstand me. I'm completely sure. But I'm quite sure like the best way of seeing what we are exchanging right now is to have a committed practice and to watch it by yourself, because you can read something and then forget it. As for example, as I said about Melanie Joy, I remember the book, but I don't remember the specifics of the book. But I can tell you what I experienced in my caution. You know what I mean? So there's certain the knowledge you might forget it, but when you become what you experience, that is totally different. So in my opinion, I'm not denying the knowledge. I'm not denying that reading books and making your research and so on. But I encourage people to have their own practice and to take it until the end and practice as much as they can. And I'm quite sure if they're diligent and they're respectful and they do it with honesty and with sincerity in their hearts, they probably will see what I see. And what I see is there's no such a thing as animal and even ourselves. So I don't know. I don't want to sound too profound or too mystic. want to try to express myself as well as I can. So hopefully people committed to practice and with good teachers and so on will figure that out by themselves. But at the same time, of course, I recommend them to make the research if they have to, or to find any kind of books of the experts that they know with data and so on. How you know what we are talking. Literally millions of animals are killing just for meat. I mean, maybe I'm you know. Taking the conversation to another place. But let me tell you this. I mean, one of the things that it doesn't make any sense for me is like, I eat meat because I like it. That is something for me that makes no sense at all. But let me tell you why. Because I like many things that I don't do. So that is a question of respect, no? So of course I remember how it tastes, the chicken. But I don't need to eat it anymore. You know what I mean? And I ate many chickens when I was a child. But for the same reason, if I want to have sex with someone in the street, I will have sex because I'm willing to do so. It makes no sense. You know what I mean? It makes no sense to do that. So that's the question of the ego I'm talking to you about. So when you dissolve somehow, or at least in part, or you just dissolve parts of your personality, you can figure out that it's not enough to do what yourself want to do all the time. And that's one of the main points of Buddhism. So to do what yourself tells you to do all the time, it might not be the right thing to do. Because the ego or yourself don't know as much as you think. So probably just to eat things because your ego says it tastes good, it might not be a good reason to do so. That's my point of view. But as I say, that is something that in Buddhism we have to study in the practice. That's my opinion.
Wow, that's incredible. I love the emphasis on how important practice is, and I think that's great, dissolving your ego. And of course it doesn't make sense to eat meat just because you like it. I think that's it's such a simple point, but it's so important.
Yeah, I mean that justify anything because your ego says to do so, or because they like it. I mean, as you know, I play piano and I don't like to play as many hours, but I have to do it. So if I listen to my ego all the time and say, Pedro, what the hell are you doing, instead of having some drinks or beers outside with your friends while you're practicing once again and again and again and again. But I have to be an adult, right? I have to be an adult. And even though the child says, okay, Pedro, you don't have to practice. Why? This is, worthless. Don't do it anymore. I have to be responsible. So I don't have to listen to it. To certain part of the ego has to be dismissed. Say, shut up. I will not hear you, right? So at the same time, it's the same with food. So I say this just, Katie, because I hear many, many times, I cannot stop eating meat because I like it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the main reasons people tell me. And I say, that means anybody can do anything because they like it.
Exactly. Yeah. Another analogy would be like someone who likes money. You don't go and rob a bank or rob someone because you like money. Just because you like money is not a justification. Once you start to cause harm to someone else, that's where you have to start questioning, is this okay? Is this something I want to do? Is this something I want to be a part of?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's the main point. And that's why I emphasize, like, vegans shouldn't be fighting against each other. It's very important to become a role model somehow, telling people that to become vegan, it's not a question of being a pacifist. Sometimes you have to say stop. You have to say don't do that. But it's a question of being which is the difference between people who wants to kill animals and some people who wants to kill carnivores. You know what I mean? It makes no sense at all. So it's very important for me to do that. So not to listen to ourselves sometimes is very important. And of course, as you say, you don't have to listen to things that hurt someone else. That's the main point, and that is something, one of the precepts of Buddhism in all kind of traditions, all kind of schools.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I want to be respectful of your time. So is there anything else that you haven't mentioned that you wanted to, or any thoughts you want to leave us with, or anything?
I don't know. Maybe Andrea has something to say.
Well, I really want to hear, your point of view. You've discussed so many amazing things, and something that really, really stuck with me this time around is not averting our eyes from suffering, like really looking at it, really acknowledging that it's there. And Buddhism, suffering is something we talk about so much, the path to suffering, how to overcome suffering. And so, just that's where, for me, Buddhism and veganism really intersect, is that suffering. For us, we want to ensure that we're not causing harm to others. And for me, I was vegan long before I was Buddhist, but once I came on the Buddhist path, I was thinking, wow, that it's painted there in black and white in the teachings that I've learned since. In every tradition, it leads you towards not causing unnecessary harm to others. And so, we, like you said, can only do so much. And that's a big thing that we can do. It's very, very easy in many cities and countries, and all the places I've been around the world, to find fruits, vegetables, beans, a plant-based diet, if you will. So yeah, I think I'm really grateful for people like you who are out there leading by example and doing what you can to ensure that less harm is being caused by animals. But and I also appreciate that you appreciate that, DBA needs to exist and PETA needs to exist, because if people don't show what's happening to the animals, no one will know. It's kept so secret in a lot of places around the world. Even in Spain, the laws against activists have been so extreme lately. Like, we're talking prison time now. We're talking hundreds of thousands of euros of dollars in punishment if you go into a farm now. So it's very important for us to at least get the information out. So like you said, people can do the investigations themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, what is happening is, I mean, let's try to put it in the right size, but it's a kind of genocide somehow. It's kind of okay. Let me go back to the example. It's like when you see the crocodile and they eat the deer or whatever. They eat what they need. You know what I mean? It's something, and they don't have the critical reason, as I say. I mean, if as they say, we are superior animals, we have to prove that somehow, right? So even though if you don't like Buddhism or you are not in a practice or something like that, just use your critical reason. It's something that it should be used all the time. That is something that we have as a species, and we have to use it. So what I really like of DBA is, like you guys say, Dharma, voices for animals. So that is exactly what James Gunn did with Rocket Raccoon. He gave it a voice. And the first word in his voice was hurts. And that is something that is really meaningful to me, because it really hurts. You know what I mean? So when you say that we don't look to the other side in Buddhism, that is something that I really fight a lot in this Zendo, in this place. Because some of my students, when they start to practice, I say, why don't you guys see this? Not only about the animals, but about suffering, human suffering too. And they say, no, I don't want to see something that is going to create a trauma in myself. And I always say, don't try to avoid reality. Don't avoid it, So what are you going to gain avoiding the real suffering? Buddhism, the first noble truth of Buddhism is the truth of suffering. Everybody in all over the world, even myself or Joseph, any kind of teacher, suffers. That's the main point of Buddhism, trying to minimize suffering. And that's the main point. I mean, the first noble truth is we all suffer, the suffer of life. We were born in suffering, we will die in suffering, we get sick and we get old, and all of that means suffering. So, but the problem is that we Western, especially Western civilizations, somehow, not all of them, but many of them, in my opinion, they look to the other side. They don't want to see that. So they don't want to see that not only with animals, But for example, cemeteries in Spain, cemeteries are outside of the towns. They don't want to get in. They don't want to face the death. You know what I mean? So it's exactly the same, in my opinion, happens with animals. People don't want to see that because it is not, as you say, in TV shows. It is not in TV channels. It is not in radio stations. It is not in the internet. You have to really search for it. You know what I mean? In the internet. So that's why I'm amazed about James Gunn. This guy made, I don't know, 1,000 million bucks office with a movie for kids talking about animal suffering in animal testing. I don't know. I don't have the data, but I think nobody has done something like that ever. So for the public, you know what I mean? So much people have seen that. So I totally agree with you that Buddhism don't look to other side. It's like, this is the wall, and you have to face yourself, your suffering, your death, the suffering of other people, and the death of other people too. You are not allowed, in my opinion, in Buddhism, to see but the truth. And the truth is also the suffering of animals and of all living beings.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Pedro, do you want to like tell people how they can find you if they want to connect with you? Maybe like a website, social media.
Well, we have a small Zendo, you know that it's a small room. I have many people who wants to get in, but if they want to write me, they can. We have an email, but our webpage is Zendo Godo.com, and or that is. I don't have any social media, as you know, and I'm a total disaster. So I never know, but they can write me, and I will be very happy to listen to their comments and to answer anybody who is interested in that. And finally, I want to really thank you back again for your amazing labor on this. I mean, for me, it's a dream come true to put together Buddhism and animal rights. I mean, I don't think if there is any kind of organization as you guys in the world. I don't really know, but I know Banja Palmers, that is also a Buddhist teacher and monk as myself, and he's in Switzerland, and he's really also an activist in veganism. You know him?
I think you sent us his information in the past.
Okay, he's a real active person and a really nice guy. I wrote him some emails and so on. But I think you guys are the only organization in the world, and it's a very important organization who put together Buddhism and animal rights. So I think Buddhism owes you a lot, guys. You are doing an amazing labor, amazing work, and I hope you guys last forever.
Thank you so much.
And sincerely, thank you for being here and speaking with us. It's been absolutely incredible to have a conversation with you. Just even personally, I've learned so much just from this 1 hour of talking with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and welcome to the family of DVA. I mean, I'm sure you have done a great job, and it's been an honor for me to be interviewed by you.
Thank you.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.